Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 10 of the ESG Experience, the podcast about all things ESG and beyond. Whether you're an ESG expert or just dipping your toes into the ESG universe, this podcast is for you. Together, we navigate the alphabet soup of ESG, share strategies, and discuss industry news and trends. I'm Helee, SVP of ESG Operations at Conservice.
And I'm Ryan Nelson, SVP and GM of ESG at Conservice.
And today, this is a fully Conservice podcast episode. We are joined by Conservice's own Marcus Burrow, who is our VP of Energy and Sustainability Solutions. He has been with the firm for 12 years. Nowadays, that's quite impressive, and leads our energy procurement service, Optimize. I'm going to embarrass Marcus a little because that's how we start off all of our podcasts, and let you know that he is a highly qualified for his job. He is a certified energy manager, a certified energy procurement professional, a certified building commissioning professional, and if that wasn't enough, a lead green associate, in addition to being in the industry for 20 years. So I think it's fair to say that after this podcast episode with Marcus, shall be experts. And today we're going to cover the topics of energy procurement, renewable energy credits and certificates, understanding deregulation across different states, solutions for managing your utility data and energy procurement efforts, and more. So we'll try to get that all in the next few minutes here.
Yeah. Welcome, Marcus.
Hello. Good to be here.
Great to have you. And I will pile on a little bit more as, you know, coming into Conservice almost 2 years ago now via acquisition, and always kind of being out there and competing in energy procurement and those types of things. It was super refreshing to come here and work with you and realize, like, holy cow, now we've got like the expert in the country on energy procurement and the tools that you have in place and the team that you have. I was like, sweet, we now are part of, you know, in addition to our ESG platform and some of the other services, we've now got like the best in class procurement platform. So that was refreshing. And I guess that's tooting our own horn now that we're all together in the same company. But yeah, excited to have this conversation. So let's start with what we'll call energy procurement. I'm going to break this down for a second. We all know what energy is. Obviously, we're talking about commercial real estate and big buildings. So they use a lot of energy. So what do we got to do? We have to procure it. It's a fancy word for buy it. We got to buy this energy. And then the next kind of term that comes into play is deregulation. So tell us about deregulation and why that has anything to do with buying energy.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. So deregulation is all about choice. That's at its core what it's about. And some states allow deregulation to take place for electricity or gas. Some don't. If you're lucky enough to be in a state that allows it, then what that means is you have a say in who supplies your electricity or gas. So you are not stuck with the utility. You know, normally, if you're in a regulated state, you just get the utility bill, open it up and pay it, and that's about the extent of what you do. In a deregulated state, you can say, well, I think I can do better than the utility. Maybe I want to go and shop around and see if I can get better supply rates than what the utility would normally provide as a default. So that at its essence is what deregulation is about. It empowers the consumer to take an active role in what they pay for their utilities, how they're billed, and if they want to incorporate any kind of green initiatives into their energy choices so they can offset what their carbon footprint is.
Touche. We are going to, as the ESG Experience podcast, we are going to talk about the environmental opportunity that comes along with that choice of responsibly buying energy. Okay, so there's a utility, and obviously the whole reason that utilities, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but have been monopolies is because, essentially been monopolies, legal monopolies or whatever, right? Because it's a real hassle, I guess, to lay down all the infrastructure. So they lay down all the infrastructure, and then if somebody else was to come in and say, well, I want to provide energy here, and then they're going to lay down all their own infrastructure. So it's not really practical. So the delivery is like, okay, we're going to have one person, one company that manages the delivery, but we're now sophisticated enough to say, okay, the source of the energy that you're getting, that can come from different suppliers. But this has to be state by state. They have to say if that's legal or not. The default is that like it's not legal.
Well, it's not so much legal or illegal. It's whether or not they've decided to pass legislation, or even some cases leave it to the voters as an initiative on a ballot to decide whether or not they want to open up their utilities to competition. In other words, do we want the hassle of having to go through this as a state and government, or do we just want to leave things the way they are? So for the states that have, and I'll just do a quick recap of what states are deregulated. So most of the Northeast is, so anything north of Virginia, with the exception of Vermont. Then you have Texas, Illinois, and Ohio. So if you're in one of those areas, then you have choice on who your supplier is. So it's important to separate what part of the bill you can actually have a say on. So to kind of echo what you were just saying, Ryan, about they had to put all this infrastructure in, and it's a lot of investment and time. So you're right about that. The wires and poles company, for lack of a better way to phrase it, they're the infrastructure and they're the delivery mechanism. So that's always going to stay the same, even if you are in a deregulated state. We can't do anything about it. The delivery charges on a utility bill, think of it like the rent that you pay the utility company for their wires and poles and the use of them. But the supply, like you said, the generation and the source of it, that's where we can come in and empower the consumer, make a choice on who their supplier is, what type of rate they want, and how they want to pay it. So delivery, our hands are tied. Supply, we can help.
So do you expect more states to become deregulated, or is there just enough opposition there that you think it will stay status quo, or do you think it might move in the other direction where more states become regulated?
It's difficult to say because each state has a different attitude toward this. For the ones that are fortunate enough to already be deregulated, I don't see them closing that up anytime soon. It's not a very common thing that happens. And for states that are currently regulated and thinking about going into deregulation, I've been seeing a pattern lately and lately is a measure of years, of them leaving it to the voters. For example, Arizona had this on the ballot a couple of years ago, and shockingly, the voters decided against it. I don't know why someone would vote against
how
having
would
a
someone
choice.
package it or present it such that it would be unappealing to voters? Because to me, it's just like giving the consumer choice and perhaps saving the consumer money. Like, how might someone who doesn't want it to pass package it as such? And then also, why would they not want it to pass? Who's like holding it up?
Yeah, and anybody that's been in a ballot box knows that the way that they word those initiatives, it's very difficult to read for pretty much anyone. So, but yeah, to answer your question, the ones that are deregulated now will likely stay that way. The ones that aren't face a really big uphill battle to get there, whether by way of legislation or voters.
Huh.
All right, so we'll work with what we have. States.
So does that mean that our services of supporting the buying of energy procurement are limited to those states?
Yes, they are. And for gas, there's a lot more availability there. Almost every state is deregulated in some way for gas. The limitation is primarily on the electric. So there's a wider market there for the gas, so we can help in more places.
Got it.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that's helpful, to understand how that works. And so your first step when you look at a customer, you're scouring their portfolio, right, to even figure out what is the opportunity just based on how many locations they have in states that they're able to procure energy, right, versus the ones that hands are tied.
Correct. Yeah. And the process that we use is, here at Conservice, we're almost always the utility billing provider for our clients. So it's very easy to use from our perspective because we already have all the information we need on the invoices that we're already processing for our clients. So it's very user-friendly, very hands-off for anyone that comes to us and asks for help. Say, can we do better than what is currently happening? So we look at the invoices, we find out what the current situation is, and we weigh that against what we know to be happening in the market. And based on, like you said, Helee, where they are geographically, if it's available, then we can do a complete analysis and show the before and after. and present our findings in summary and say, this is what we recommend based on what we know to be happening with prices in general and what their intentions are for each particular property and the time horizon they're going to operate.
And are you able to do, like, what's the kind of landscape of the suppliers? Are you able to do kind of one blanket agreement or one bid process across multiple states, or is it kind of state by state, or are there groupings of states?
Yeah, the answer to that is you almost always want to keep it in one state, or even more so in one investor-owned utility, which is kind of like a regional operator, like New York has its own, and then Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, referred to as PJM, which actually covers a wide area. That would be one investor-owned utility, but it's going to be best from an operational point of view and from a contracting point of view if it's state by state. And that's the process that we put in place. So when we start the bids, we put the opportunity out there to any suppliers that are operating in the market that we've already vetted, that we trust, and we allow them to bid on that particular opportunity. And then once all the bids arrive, we'll compile that and put it in sort of a matrix that the clients can interact with on our online exclusive portal.
And the answer is always, this one's the cheapest. Use this one.
I can't imagine why not.
Well, there's a little more to consider there. So some suppliers, they use their contract language a little differently than others. So what we vet when we got with these opportunities is, does the contract language meet what the client's asking for? So one thing that this is an example that we look for is, if someone's looking into fixed rates, is the contract a full requirements contract, which means no matter how little or how much a customer uses, the rate will be the same no matter what. Whereas some suppliers, they'll say, well, we're going to fix your rate for a specified quantity based on your historical consumption load, and anything above or below that is bought or sold at what the market rate is. So that might be a lower bid because there's less risk exposure to the supplier that's taking out the hedge on behalf of the customer, but it's not necessarily a fixed rate in totality. So those are the kind of things that we watch for and make sure that everybody's bidding apples to apples, and we look for those kind of pitfalls in the agreement contract language.
So is it possible to say, so understood that if you're buying energy directly from the utility in a deregulated state, you're essentially wasting money and you could do better, you can get a better price. What is the approximate savings, like, say, and maybe it just varies too much that you can't say, are people going to save like 10%, or they can save 40%, or it really just depends state by state and what kind of contract they have?
Yeah, to assign a blanket percentage like that, I don't think is a good way to characterize it. I get that question a lot, and the answer varies by region, by state, and also based on what's happening in the market. Sometimes the utility rate is better than what's out there, just because maybe there's a spike happening. A lot of times we'll see a significant savings. Like, for example, Connecticut just doubled their rates. If you're on the default utility rate there, your rate went from 10 cents to 20. That's just the supply piece, not counting the delivery charges. Yeah. So we saw a mad rush to get ahead of that, and luckily the state attorney general put out a notice a year ahead of time, letting everybody know it was going to happen. So
they told people in advance it was going to double. And why did it double? What was the reasoning behind it, or just because they can and it's a monopoly and they wanted to do it?
No, it's costing a lot more. New England is unique in that it has sensitivities more so than other states based on what's happening in Europe. And we all know what's going on right there with the geopolitical climate in Europe right now with their shortages in energy. So that has a ripple effect that carries over the water and can affect the Northeast. Not so much the Mid-Atlantic, but definitely the Northeast.
So it does sound like it's kind of a sophisticated buy, or by being sophisticated, you can do better, because like you said, you're going to look at past usage, but that doesn't, you also have to have some alignment on, well, what capital projects are you having at your buildings? Maybe you have a bunch of people moving in or out, it could change things, and then you get stuck utilizing some portion of a rate structure that that you didn't like. And then some people, I guess, have a different appetite for, you talked about fixed rate. So do you want to play the market, or do you just want a fixed rate? And I assume that's easier to like budget against. Some people just like to know, so they put the right budget, versus a variable market where you're going to have quite a lot of volatility. So is there anything else that typically drives the choice that might be different across different customers?
Sure, yeah. So the first things that we want to discover when we're approaching a project for a client is, what is their time horizon? How long will they be operating the property? Because we don't want to enter into an agreement that's going to be longer than what they would operate, simply because it can encumber a sale. If they're going to disposition the property, the incoming buyer would need to agree to assume the remainder of the agreement. Otherwise, it would trigger early termination fees. So we obviously want to avoid those pitfalls. And what's their appetite for risk, if any? Is it such that you're completely risk averse and you just want to know what to expect and that's that and be done with it? Or do you want to go down with the market if it goes down? So this comes to the core discussion of, what are the pros and cons of both types of rate structures? So with a fixed rate, your pros is pretty simple. It's fixed. It's not going to change. I don't have to think about it. What it is what it is, and I can put it away for the duration of the agreement. That's the pro. The con is, if the market goes down, you don't go down with it. The opposite is true for variable or indexed products. You're fully exposed or partially exposed to market movements, and any increases in price, you fully realize those. And the inverse is true as well. If the market goes down, the index or the variable rate product will follow it down, and you pay the lowest amount at that time. So two different strategies, both have their pros and cons. There's no one size fits all. Really just depends on what a customer's priorities are and their appetite for risk or their aversion to it. And those are things we find out at the beginning, because those factor into what we recommend and don't recommend. It's not going to be the same for each customer.
And are there different, like there's blends as well? Like you don't have to commit all to one strategy or all to the other. You can do a different blend of different types of hedging strategies and such, right? Like it can get kind of complex.
Yeah, and it's just really just depends on how they want to approach it. So maybe you fix half of your load and then you float the other half, or 75% or whatever the number may be. Or within the supply component, there's other sub components of that, or the line items that make up that total number, like your capacity charges and your transmission charges within that supply number. Maybe they want to just lock the raw energy and float those other two pieces, or vice versa. So it can be as simple and hands off, or as complex as somebody wants it to be. Just every client's different and everybody approaches it differently. So we'll discover all of those attributes at the beginning and then factor our recommendations within those preferences.
So speaking of different strategies, so one might be energy is a commodity, give me the cheapest one or something, or one might be I'm risk averse, or whatever it might be. What about folks that actually care where their energy is coming from? So they say, I want to buy X percentage of clean energy, or it's important to me that my energy is not coal, or burning coal or something like that. What do you see, or like what are examples of customers that do that, and how do they manage that desire?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So this is actually becoming more and more popular. A lot of organizations have green initiatives and targets that they need to hit for certain periods of time or certain calendar years. And this is a really, really easy way to do that. When you purchase energy supply, you can either buy what we call green energy, which is just sourcing it from green sources like wind, solar, hydro. Or if you want to separate the two items, you can just buy the energy like you normally do, and then on the other side buy renewable energy credits, which are going to offset the carbon that was created by the power that you bought. So it's the ease of use of this is really, really good, simply because it's just a paper transaction. You don't have to make any physical changes to the property. You don't have to install solar panels. You don't have to put any other kind of energy conservation measures in place. It's just typically it's going to be slightly more costly than standard brown power would be, but in most markets it's less than half of a cent. So if they can afford half of a cent more per kilowatt hour, they can go green. So
there's still a premium. It's not like an all things equal situation.
Correct. Yeah, it's always going to be just slightly more, but in the context of what power costs in general, it's pretty negligible to go green in terms of cost.
And so that's in the deregulated markets, there's a reasonable chance that there are suppliers, like a particular supplier that offers green energy. Is that right?
Yes, almost all of them do, and some only sell green energy. There's a few suppliers out there that they don't even offer brown power anymore, but almost all of them will allow the option to buy what we call a green power contract, which has attached to it the renewable energy credits or the green power sourcing that comes along with what they're buying. So yeah, that's going to be an option in every single deregulated market. And for the clients that aren't in deregulated markets, and they're on regulated markets like municipal utilities, the city of whatever, you can still go green there by way of renewable energy credits. So there's no geographic limitation to those.
Got it. Okay, so if you can choose a green energy, your supplier is going to produce that energy. Obviously, it goes into the grid. You don't know what's actually like showing up at your building or something to that effect, but like you're buying for the production of the green energy that you need to get to your for your needs. So that's cool. Or you can go a little tiny bit cheaper and get the brown energy. Then, if you're in a deregulated market or not, you can. Let's talk about these RECs for a minute, renewable energy certificates or renewable energy credits. I think you can call them either way, but you're basically figuring a REC, I think, is typically 1 megawatt hour of energy, and you can decide to buy a REC, and you're basically saying, hey, maybe I bought brown energy, but I know this is how much I bought. So now I'm basically paying money to buy a REC that says this much green energy was produced. So I'm saying, okay, even though I did that, I'm also just going to write this check and make sure that whoever produced, it's really, I think, significantly helping the green energy market by saying, hey, if we produce this, I think what happens is the suppliers that make the green energy, they sell the energy, but then they also get to sell these RECs on top of it. So it helps, I don't know if the word is subsidized or whatever, but now they're getting that. And so then they're able to make more investments, produce more green energy and the whole thing. So I love the idea of RECs. Of course, everyone, ideally, you're buying green energy and you're continuing to use less and less energy and you're net zero one way or another. But meanwhile, pay for RECs, feel better about it, and continue to invest in the strategy of or in the infrastructure of renewable energy.
Yeah, that's the exact intention behind the REC market, is to encourage more, not necessarily subsidized because it's voluntary. You don't have to buy RECs, but if you choose to, then it encourages more domestic green energy production sources. And you can even take it a step further and buy certain types of RECs, like a Green E certified REC is only going to get its sources of power from wind or solar. That's all they use. You can do other types of one that comes from hydro or some other initiatives. But the idea behind it is exactly what you said. It encourages the growth of these clean energy producing sources, in addition to providing the power on the grid anyway. So it's really a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I know our customers, I mean, there's a little controversy there, right? Because they want to be seen as, moving forward other energy and ESG initiatives by actually, doing stuff, if you will, at the properties versus just throwing money, at a REC. So I think where they've landed is like, this shouldn't be 100% of your energy or ESG strategy. It should just be a component of it. So that, if you are subsidizing some green power, that's fine. And that's an element of the program you put together, but it shouldn't be, and this is again, in customers that I've talked to, it shouldn't be a substitute, or it shouldn't be like the majority of your strategy. So it should just be kind of like one of the arrows in your quiver.
Of course. Yeah. Ideally, the most impactful solutions in terms of green power are going to be on-site production, solar panels or otherwise. That's the cleanest and the most direct way to do it. However, those are capital intensive projects, and sometimes they make sense financially, sometimes they don't, for the different types of properties and how they operate and what their intent is. So you want to do those types of things first because they have the most impact. But where that's not practical, this is a great way, meaning RECs, to fill in those gaps and meet your renewable energy targets.
Makes sense.
Cool. Well, we're not here to plug our own services, or are we? No, but it does sound fairly complex for something that you need to buy. But so getting some support, being thoughtful and strategic about how you buy energy for your portfolio is it sounds like a very useful thing if you're in a market. I mean, it sounds like anything like Helee said earlier, you should probably be doing this if you're in a deregulated market. I think to your point, Marcus, it doesn't guarantee that the utility is always more expensive, but if you put a thoughtful strategy together over the course of multiple years, it sounds like you'll probably do better, or you'll meet your other goals by being predictable or by getting some green energy or what it is. So, and avoiding what happened in Connecticut. Obviously, they make the announcement. There's something that you can actually do about it. Do it ahead of time. So, makes sense to have some professional help from maybe from a CEM, CEP, CB, CP lead GA. That could help. Well, awesome. That was really cool to dive in and learn a little bit more about that, about energy procurement, the deregulated markets, and RECs. That brings us to a fan favorite little competition we have for you, Marcus. It's a very easy thing. All you have to do is tell me if this is a coffee or a beer. I'm just going to tell you a word, and it's either a coffee or a beer. And that's all. That's all you have to do. It's basically 50-50. All right. This one is called, here we go, Rec League.
Rec League? I'm going to go with beer on that.
Helee, why did I pick this one?
Well, because you always try to cleverly, not just try, you're always successful in cleverly tying it back to our guest and either their geography. But in this case, because REC is renewable energy certificate, you probably thought that was really clever. Yeah.
I did think that was clever. So it's called Rec League.
Win or not?
He won. That is correct. It is a beer.
Yes.
Good job. It's called Rec League. I don't believe the rec in this Rec League is for renewable energy certificates specifically, but if you track down the maker of this, Harpoon Brewery makes Rec League, and they're out of Boston, Massachusetts, and also seems like they're very proud of their employee-owned company, and it does seem like a responsible business, maintaining independence, and they're about to be 5 years into having converted to being employee-owned through an ESOP program. So anyway, it seems like a cool company, and I'm going to try and find myself some Rec League beer and check it out. And congratulations on your win, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's good to have your pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much. So this has been another episode of the ESG Experience podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed your time with us, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast directory. There's a new episode every month. We appreciate our subscribers for continuing to support our podcast. And if you want to continue the conversation between episodes, follow us on your favorite social media channel at #ESG Experience. We'll catch you next time.